Hey everyone, this is Ashley Leftwich, and this is my Module 3 video presentation for learning objectives. So last week we looked at Bloom's taxonomy and the different levels of his taxonomy and how that applies to the classroom and making students think outside of the box and not just stay in this lower level order of thinking and that remember and understand. We want them to continually move up to the apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. But now we're taking a look at how can we take this information of Bloom's taxonomy and apply it to creating learning objectives that are thorough, that are measurable, attainable, but also challenging for the students in the right context, of course. So to start off, when we're building a learning objective, you need to use a sentence stem. In my case, I teach kinder through 5th grade, and a lot of the times my learning objectives start with the student will be able to, the learner will be able to, or if I'm writing it so that it's in kid-friendly language so that they're going to read it, which I have transitioned to so that it's more student-led instead of me-led. It says, we will be successful when. So that's what I start most of my sentences off with if I'm going to have it in student-friendly language, is we will be successful when. But then you need to determine your learning outcome. And what I mean by that is, what are students doing? Are we saying that they're going to define something? Like, for example, are they going to define the amendments in the Bill of Rights? Or are they going to do something a little higher? Are they going to create? Or would they create an amendment to be added to the Constitution? You know, what are you wanting students to do to apply their learning? And then this is where the Bloom's taxonomy really ties in. You want to select your level of Bloom's and your verbs. This is just an example list of verbs. Sometimes verbs are not necessarily finite in one area. For example, applying. I often see that verb solve over here in the applying side, but there are times where solve is really understanding. Are they solving just their multiplication facts? And if so, that's really just remembering and understanding their facts. That's not necessarily applying something. So you do have to be careful and really look at the verb and analyze it before you decide, okay, I'm wanting to be in this analyze stage. Is investigate or organize or outline going to fit what I want my students to be able to do? And then you're going to combine all of those steps together, your sentence stem, your objective, and then your verb and level that you have in mind to create a complete sentence. And I say complete sentence because I cannot tell you how many curriculum resources or books I've been given where they say there's a learning objective made for you, and they're not complete sentences, and you look at them very puzzling. So you want to make sure it's a complete sentence because you want it to make sense, for one, but you want it to have a subject, a verb, and really an action because you have something you want the students to do. You have an action you're wanting them to complete and achieve. With that too, the learning objective needs to be something measurable. Often this throws teachers off, and even still in the classroom currently, that's something that throws me off, is how am I going to make this something that's measurable? And I'm going to show you with this. So this is a current learning objective. I'm actually going to be using this topic next week for my 5th grade math class, and it says we will be successful when we can add and subtract proper fractions with unequal denominators using computation and models. Now, I use academic vocabulary here because, one, I have a high level of English language learners. So I want them to be exposed to that academic vocabulary constantly. I'm constantly reading things like that that might be on my board that I normally wouldn't read because I want that constant exposure. But back to the learning objectives. I started off with this sentence stem, we will be successful when. So I defined, this is my success criteria. Here's my exemplar. This is what I need for you to be successful and meet our learning objective. In this case, we're adding and subtracting proper fractions. So I've already defined to them what proper fractions are. Proper fractions are where the numerator is not larger than the denominator, so it's not a mixed number or a whole number. But it does have unequal denominators, so they have to be able to convert them to equal denominators before they add or subtract. But here's where I set the learning object, or not the learning objective, the success criteria and how it's going to be measurable is this with using computation and models. Now, for school, a lot of times you know that 70% is passing, 100% is exemplary, below 70 is failing. So that's usually the set, what is the range here that we need to pass. But I've also clearly defined what I want them to use, not just what the objective is, but also what methods are they going to use to be successful in this objective. Now, this is a lot of lower level because I would say it is the application, the remembering, because and really understanding, because do they understand the steps? Are they able to apply the steps? And I'm going to dive into my project-based learning because that's what I've been assigned for my week 6 project. But on top of that, project-based learning is very seamlessly integrated with Bloom's taxonomy. It starts with really an engaging question most of the time. And then students have anywhere from a week to, I've seen, a semester-long project of investigating through a series of trial and error, of play, of their own research, and it's very heavily student-led. The teachers are really only the facilitators to maintain the structure of, I would say, a classroom and students working together, but it is very heavily student-led. But with that, I wanted to set some learning objectives that would be applicable to my project-based learning in week 6. So these are my 3 that I've picked. I chose these because, one, I'm going to need a lower level of can my learner recall or identify what project-based learning is. And then I went into the conceptual thinking. Can we apply it? Can we categorize it? Can we even implement it? Which I think kind of lends into the DOK 2 and 3 level. But then now we have the last one, compare and contrast. So can my learner look there and really dissect it, but also analyze the benefits of project-based learning? So I'm excited to dive into this. I've seen it a few times in the classroom. A lot of times we don't tend to lend ourselves to project-based learning in public education because we're very worried about standardized testing or COVID gaps and things like that, which is great. But at the same time, we miss out sometimes on the benefits of learning in ways like this, like project-based learning. So here are my works cited for this project. I hope you have enjoyed, and I've really enjoyed this topic, so I'm excited to see what everyone else has put out there. Thank you.